What up, family? It's time for us to come together and talk about Trent Baalke. I'll do that here today and tell you why he has to go, even if certain things aren't his fault. And I'll do it today here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, your host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you that we are free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening to it right now, or on YouTube. You do not have to pay. You just check it out, like, subscribe, and come hang out with us. A little bit under the weather, I'm going to warn you right now. If you hear a pause, it's because I've muted to cough. Or if you see some sort of pause or me leave the screen, I'm leaking. So I have to take care of myself to make sure I don't gross y'all out. Some bug jumped on me Sunday night and has me a little bit down today. That's why I had a little 24-hour hiatus. But we're here. We're in full effect. And we got a family discussion we have to have today on Trent Baalke, the once embattled GM of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Got a little bit of reprieve earlier this year because the team looked like it was trying to turn a corner. I even suggested, I didn't suggest that we owed him an apology. I suggested that we ought to have a question and entertain the question of, do we owe him an apology? And you guys told me it's too early. I said, okay, we'll put that to bed. It is not too early now to blame him for a lot of things that's going on, and we'll do that today. We're going to break it down for you. The crux of this whole thing is this. In 2 years, we took over this team almost 2 years ago, and we're not going to allow Urban Meyer to be a scapegoat, because if you've been around enough and you ask anyone with a media credential who's talked to them off the record, they'll tell you that a lot of things that happen around here, Trent Baalke co-signed them. There were very few things that Urban did by himself. I think Urban probably had something to do with them signing Philip Dorsett, Tim Tebow getting a tryout, and then all of the shenanigans that were going on when he realized he didn't know how to lead people. But in terms of the procurement of talent, even the hiring of that strength and conditioning coordinator, Trent had his hand in all of that stuff. So don't fool yourself and think that he didn't. But so I said that to get that out of the way. But 2 years ago, he took over. He had the number one pick. We didn't know that the second year he would also have the number one pick. And it's not just the number one pick. It's the first pick in every round of the draft, unless it was traded away. But he also had $100 million. $100 million in cap space, or close to it. Unprecedented amount of an arsenal, if you will, of resources. A franchise quarterback that even future Hall of Famer Trent Williams mentioned on the Richard Sherman podcast that, hey, Trevor Lawrence is going to Jacksonville. That tells you that the consciousness of the people around the NFL was that there might be some success there soon. So it was not a place where folks were not wanting to go. It wasn't considered purgatory anymore, you know? What happened? For this team to be sitting here and we're saying they need any and everything with the exception of a quarterback or a running back is not good, especially when they're going to have to create salary cap room now. Just 2 years after he spent all that money, all of these sunken costs, for this team to conceivably need every single thing you could imagine is not a good thing at this point.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We appreciate that. We know who we are right now. I pushed the wrong button, but that's okay. Trying to make sure y'all didn't see me taking care of my hygiene here, but I appreciate you telling us that we're Locked On Jaguars, but the point is that this is what is causing the angst of the people. Now, this is just a week after they lost. I mean, they beat Baltimore, and I don't remember 5 games in the regular season where the euphoria was any happier than that. So I guess folks are saying, how could you just totally switch up a week later and all of a sudden want to run the guy out of here when you were just talking about them making a playoff run? Well, I'll tell you why. Because of what I just said. A week ago, it was euphoric, and then a week later, the balloon got busted. And that's that variance of performance that I keep talking about. That means this team is not good enough. Now, is it his fault that Travis Etienne fumbled on the second play of the game? No. Is it his fault that Zay Jones, all of a sudden, after a week of catching everything, couldn't catch a ball Sunday? No, it's not his fault. Is it his fault that Trevor, in a couple of winnable games, threw an interception in the end zone from first and goal or from the 5-yard line? Absolutely not. Is it his fault that Trayvon Walker got a bad penalty against the Houston Texans that probably cost them the game? Nope, that's not his fault either. None of that is. Individually, it's not his fault. Everything that they do wrong when a guy drops a ball or Trevor fumbles 4 times and then throws a pick in Washington or in Philadelphia in the rain is that Trent Baalke's fault. These individual actions are not his fault. When a field goal kicker misses an extra point and puts him at a disadvantage, is that his fault? No. Is it his fault that guys couldn't tackle kick returners the other day against Detroit? No. Is it his fault that Detroit scored on every single drive that they had the other day? And I said on the postcast, I said it was 4 or 5. No, it was every one of them. They didn't punt. No, that's not his fault. Those individual things are not his fault. But collectively, the team that does those things that are 4-8, 2 years into you having a franchise quarterback who's proven himself, 2 years into this entire rebuild where you had all of these resources, 2 years in, bro, 2. And you look around and say, what do they need to fix it? How do you fix it? Here we go. Do you trust that he's the guy that you want to give Shad Khan that answer? Absolutely not. There is a unique difference between whether or not all of the things that have gone wrong here are his fault, or is he the guy that's going to take us out of this situation and bring this franchise to glory? Those are 2 different questions. He had a chance to try to bring this franchise out, and in 2 years, they are cash strapped as far as salary cap wise, which ain't real. New Orleans Saints taught you that. They'll figure out how to spend some money. But question that we'll answer here in segment 2 is, do you think, and is he the guy that you want to give that money to for a second time? His track record indicates that he is not that guy. And I'm going to tell you and show you exactly what I mean by that as we get to segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, where I'm going to run Trent Baalke right on up out of town, and we're going to tell Shad Khan, Sean, we need to talk. We'll do that in segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars in just 1 second, after I let you guys know that today's sponsor of our show today is LinkedIn Talent Solutions. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. As someone who has owned 3 small businesses, I know what it's like to have the right people. I can tell you some horror stories of hiring the wrong people. But if I had LinkedIn at those times, I would not have had to go through that. And I know that for a fact. What you have to do is add your job to the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn. That's a hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Special tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's almost like a match made in heaven is what it is. It's why small businesses will rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified applicants you want and the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I will roll along here on Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars Daily Podcast, and we thank you for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. To be the person that's going to bring the Jaguars out of purgatory once again. I can't believe we're talking about this because this is what we thought he was doing last year, right? This is what we thought was going to happen, that we wouldn't have these conversations again. Well, as it turns out right now, the Jaguars, if the season ended today, they would not be picking first. They would, however, be picking seventh. So there's a little bit of progress. The question you have to ask is that the type of progress that Shad Khan was expecting? I don't know if it's the kind of progress that he was expecting. I saw something yesterday where Shad said that that somewhere, an article, I believe either John Shipley or Meyer O'Brien posted it, that Shad was not judging Baalke by wins or losses, but more or less progress. So how much progress have they truly made? That is the question. How much progress truly has been made? When you consider the fact that they still need everything, right? The Jaguars need absolutely everything with the exception of quarterback. They don't need a quarterback right now, but they need everything else you could imagine a team needing, even a backup running back. They don't necessarily need a running back, but you always need another one because, as you saw, Travis Etienne got banged up a little bit just last week. So I don't think he has the confidence of the people. I don't think he has my confidence. He definitely doesn't have. I don't think Trent Baalke should have been kept in the first place. And this is why I say, Shad, we need to talk to you again, because this is exactly what I was afraid of. If you'd have asked me 2 years ago, or even this year when they announced Doug Peterson be the coach, what would happen? Which one of if this goes wrong, or at the end of this year, there still is a lack of direction and you don't know how they're going to find a way to get out of it because they don't have enough really good players, who's going to be the one to blame for it? I would have done it, and everybody else would have pointed the finger right at Trent Baalke. The importance that you have to understand here is this. This ship is being navigated by two people. It's Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. And if you polled every fan or every member of the media, they would tell you, I agree. Those two guys, everything should be built around them, because I have some fan hit me up in the comments and they'll tell me you don't build your team around one player or one coach because that's how you get yourself in trouble. Well, here's the news flash for you. If you don't build it around the best parts of your team, or the people that are most likely to help you get out of it, you'll never build anything. You got to put your feet 10 toes. You got to have 10 toes down somewhere. You have to batten down your hatches and you have to hitch them to something. And so you hitch it. I'm willing to hitch mine to those two as a tandem. I'm willing to commit to those two as the reason why, or who you hitch everything to, those two people moving forward. Because what you don't, you end up with a lack of direction, and you end up all over the place. You end up trying to be a napkin in a windstorm. Like, hopefully the wind will blow us somewhere where we like to be. And when it stops, we're in a good spot. And that's not the way this works. This has to be a proactive approach. This has to be a situation where you know where you're going. It's deliberate. You say, nope, it's Doug and it's Trevor. It's you two. Now, what do I get to supplement that? And that's where we come into play. The good teams around the league seem to have a match between not only coach and quarterback, but they have another match between front office and the coach. That's why when guys get jobs as front office people, they hire someone that they're extremely familiar with to come in and be the coach. Sometimes that's nepotism. Sometimes it's friendship. Sometimes it's all of that, but it is what it is. People are going to hire folks that understand their workflow, especially the dynamic between GM and GM and coach. It's almost as important as coach and quarterback. It's almost as important as offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. We'll discuss that too, because in the third segment, we'll hit the fact that Mike Caldwell might be in a little bit of trouble because some things ain't looking right in the light. But I don't think Trent Baalke is the guy to lead this team. Like I said, there's no need to cherry pick and see, okay, well, this guy worked out, this guy worked out, this guy didn't. Because, yeah, he's hit on some people. But we said team building. We're not talking about just the procurement of talent. We're talking about team building. It just hasn't worked because outside of quarterback and running back, with all of the money and all the draft picks they've had, they still don't seem, and one linebacker, they still don't seem like they've settled on anything. So basically, if I take a macro approach and look at it in a point of view, you spent all my money and used all of these resources, but yet still, we only have two areas on this team where we don't need help. That's wrong. No matter how you cut it, that's not going to cut it. No matter how you cut it, that's not going to cut it. I'll finish up with this subject in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars, man, because it is extremely important that I not only just complain about the way things are, I have to give you a little bit of solution. And I'll do that here on Locked On Jaguars in just a second. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. That's right, Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. That's why you'll be able to find a sneak peek of Block Forever available on Locked On NFL right now. Block Forever is a brand new podcast with former NFL All-Pro Ryan Khalil and Audible. Khalil takes a conversation about football to the next level. He gives football fans an insider's look at the game through the eyes of the greatest players and personalities of all time. And let me tell you something about that. There's nothing I like more than hearing guys talk about the days of football and tell it to you from a perspective that you did not see. I got a great story about the Pittsburgh Steelers winning here on a Sunday night and hanging out here downtown with a bunch of Jaguar players back in the day. It's hilarious. But Khalil sits down with star players, coaches, and former pros across the league to get you the real about what happens on the field, behind the scenes, inside locker rooms, during team meetings, and back at the hotel. Head over to Locked On NFL for a sneak peek of Block Forever, or catch the full series available anywhere you get your podcast. Available everywhere now. Audible. Get in the game. Get in the game here with me on Locked On Jaguars every single day, because it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. Bear with me, man. I know I'm not as exciting today. And I also know that I'm leaking a little bit, and I'm not quite 100%, but I thank you for giving me a chance to come on here today and talk a little bit of Trent Baalke, because it needs to be talked about, man. We got to have this family discussion. While I don't think everything has gone terrible, I don't think everything is his fault. I don't consider Trayvon Walker a bust. I do think that there were some missteps in the fact that you never saw him stand up in the three-point stance in college, and now all of a sudden you think he's going to do it now. But I warned people that with Trayvon, the stats probably weren't going to be there, and people would judge that pick based on whether the team was good or not. And the team isn't good. I think if the team was good, if the team was at least 6-5 at this point, or I guess they would have to be 6-6, but 6-6 or 7-5 at this point, his stats wouldn't bother you because it would be a team collective effort. But I've been telling y'all about somebody else for 2.5 years. And if you followed me, how many times have I tweeted y'all during the games? I said, watch 41 and see if he's really winning or not. He wasn't. And folks are saying, well, he don't have nobody on the other side. Don't care about nobody being on the other side when they're blocking you one-on-one. Doesn't matter. The other side matters if you're being double or if the quarterback's rolling away from you. That's not happening. He hasn't been beating anybody for 2.5 years. And too many times we fall in love with guys that just say that they want to be in Duval and they say all the right things, and because they're nice people, we fall out of favor with dudes that can actually really play that probably ain't the nicest people in the world. When this is a gladiator sport, it's football. And we fall on management side. I got a news flash for you. We talking about sacks. Yannick Ngakoue, the guy that they didn't want to give an extra $4 million to over the life of his contract, and I know he's been on 5 different teams, but what you've never seen is that he's been released. You always see that someone has traded for him. Just the other day, he got to the 8.5 sack mark. You know what that means? He's one of only 5 players in NFL history in his first 7 seasons to have 8 sacks. So we're sitting here lamenting and talking about the lack of numbers from Trayvon Walker. You would love to see either Josh Allen or Trayvon Walker right now sitting at 8 sacks, wouldn't you? Yeah. Regardless if he does well against the run, that's not saving Trayvon when Trayvon has more tackles than any rookie at his position. I'll give you a case in point that I'm telling you about the record. The Giants are 7-4-1. You think anybody cares that Kayvon Thibodeau only has 2 sacks? No, because when you watch the tape, he's running ragged, and those quarterbacks are running for their life from him. He's getting quarterback pressures, and the team has a 7-4-1 record. Therefore, no one cares that dude or that Evan Neal barely plays anymore after he got hurt early in the season, even though he's been healthy. No one cares because they're winning. Winning cures all of that stuff. But when you lose, you're going to get it pointed out that, okay, well, statistically, your guys are not doing well either. The fact is the Jaguars need a pass rush. And they got a guy in Josh Allen that they could have got rid of and traded at the trade deadline, and they refused to do it. And now they're stuck with $11 million or something like that on the 5th-year option. I think it's somewhere between 11 and 17 million. But he ain't worth it. Shaq Griffin probably will never play another down here, and they're paying him a bunch of money, 14, 15 million. He ain't worth it. Fadukasi, he ain't worth the money they paid him. Devin Lloyd's a 24-year-old rookie that don't have no upside because he's 24. He ain't 21, and he already got benched. Chad Mooma's all right, but he's 23. He ain't no spring chicken. I mean, we can go down the line. Rayshawn Jenkins, you gonna pay him over $9-10 million next year as a box safety? I mean, I don't know, man. There's a lot. When you look at the overall team building, there's a lot left to be desired. Excuse me. Tried to catch that with the mute button, but didn't work. But there's a lot to be desired. Trent Baalke is not the one you want to give the keys to for the future to lift this franchise, because they should be closer by now. Detroit's closer than Jacksonville. And they were in a similar situation 2 years ago. The Jets are closer than Jacksonville, and they were right in the same situation 2 years ago. The Jets are closer than Jacksonville, and the quarterback they picked after Trevor Lawrence then got benched, and people don't believe he's ever going to get his job back. He's the new Baker Mayfield. And they're still closer than Jacksonville. I don't know about Mike Caldwell as defensive coordinator. I think that was on Doug. Doug might have to revisit that. Or Mike Caldwell and Doug might be saying, hey, look what you just said about the talent on the team. We just don't have enough people to do it. And the scheme is fine. We just don't have enough people. The fact that we're sitting here and having these conversations about what is it, I'll tell you what it is. It's the GM. That's first. Doesn't mean that other problems don't exist. But I'm willing to point my finger right now at Trent Baalke because I told you so. And I'm not saying it because I want it to be right or you guys want to be right. But it's a big old I told you so. I told you there were going to be problems eventually, and it wasn't going to work. You have a rookie in Trevor Lawrence. This is where you need to be building your ball club because he's on a rookie deal, and you ain't got no money because you don't spend all your money on players that aren't good enough to be put in the roles and receiving the money that they're receiving. You might not even have enough money to keep a guy like DeJuan Smoot, who's a guy that needs to be here forever. Made that mistake with guys like Mercedes Lewis in the past. DeJuan Smoot is a role player, but he needs to be playing a role here forever, and you might not be able to afford him because you spent money elsewhere doing all these other things. You still need a guard. You still average at left tackle, but they spent all this money. This is why you need to give the keys to someone else. And in my opinion, that someone is a guy like Mike Bradway in Kansas City because he knows Doug, he knows Andy, he knows the system, he knows the type of players. He's been a scout for both the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. He's now the director of player personnel, one of the assistant GMs. He's young, he's brass, he's been out there with a hoodie on in the rain, scouting players. He understands both of those guys. He understands what they need. And this is why I say you're going to hitch your wagons to Doug and Trevor as a duo, because you need a GM that's going to be in full support of them and give them every ingredient they need and who can go grocery shopping without them being there because he knows how to cook the dish himself. That's what the Jaguars need to do. Will they do it? I doubt it very seriously. More than likely, he'll look at the shop, will look at the progress just like he always does, and he's going to keep Trent Baalke. And they may improve a little bit and get a little bit better, but it might just be a little bit. It might be just enough to make you think that it's going to always be good, and then it always turns out the way it turns out. Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast because it is actually always good with my man Peter Bukowski, using local experts to tell you about the biggest stories of the day from around the world of sports. It's a fast, quick 30 minutes, man, but it'll fill you up all day. Make sure you check it out on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts, even on YouTube. All right, man. Sorry I'm down a little bit of the weather. Excuse the pauses, excuse the one little cough, and excuse the way my voice sounds with this cough drop in my mouth and my nose feels like it's full of cement. But I hopefully will be back tomorrow with another podcast, reaching out to you and thanking you for allowing us to be your first listen every single day. Make sure y'all take care of each other, man. It's a nasty little bug going around, and it is awful. Until tomorrow, take care. I'm Tony Wiggins.